Hey there, friends. My name's Jim, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about inflation and kind of the ideas surrounding the problems that we're having right now with the economy, with the supply chain crisis, and with rising prices. Gas prices are going up, and everybody's noticing it. And naturally, the political parties want to flex their muscle a little bit, show what they can do, and kind of play the "this isn't our fault" blame game while we get closer and closer to flying off of the edge of the cliff in our car and landing very, very hard. So let's start with a tweet from our dear President Biden. As I like to say, our betters are our betters. So we just got to remember that even when their ideas don't make sense to us necessarily, we're just the plebeian brains. We're not that smart. So people like this are the people who truly, truly know what's going on. So let me read. The United States pays its debts when they are due. That's why today I signed a bill to fast track the process to raise our debt limit. Let me see if I can translate that a bit. That's roughly this household pays our bills. So today I signed up for a new Capital One card so that I could pay our electric bill to keep from getting our heat shut off. Now, I don't know if I would personally tweet that, but I'm not necessarily a big brain politician guy, so I can't even go there. But this kind of goes to this kind of encapsulates part of the issue with our monetary system in general and the people running it specifically right now. Now, that's not to say that again, this doesn't happen, that people don't play political football with this and generally pretend like, oh, the government's going to shut down, everything's going to crush, and then to try and get their pet projects paid for, which kind of happened this time, which led to a little bit of an unprecedented deal that was made here. But because they did vote to raise the debt limit by 2.5 trillion dollars, but it was a strictly partisan line vote with 50 Democrats voting for, 49 Republicans voting against, and then one Republican abstaining. They wanted to do it this way so that they didn't have to go through a budget reconciliation vote in which they would need more than a simple majority, because they don't want to have to deal with the filibusters and the Republicans saying that these guys clearly don't know what they're doing, because then there would be clips going around of people pointing out that they clearly don't know what they're doing, and that's not good for the midterms. So what happened here during COVID is kind of hard to overstate. What happened is the largest wealth transfer in the history of humanity has occurred right under our noses as we were sitting there begging for our $400 stimulus checks. People like Jeff Bezos, the Walton family, BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, all of these very, very big companies. And of course you've got Merck and Pfizer and Moderna, which I think it had something like $1.3 billion in profit, and something like 1.25 billion of it was all the vaccine. And this is the first vaccine that Moderna has ever successfully rolled out, by the way. Another interesting thing is that it was literally created in 2 days, but, again, our betters know better, so I'm sure it's safe and effective. But during the earlier in this crisis, there was something that happened when they changed the way that we count the M1 money supply. Now let's go over to the St. Louis Fed, and you can see that this is the M1 money supply. There's a couple of different money supplies that you can calculate, but the M1 is the one that we follow that has like your bank account. It counts that kind of money that's floating around in the economy. Simple way of putting it. And as you can see in this chart, this is how many billions of dollars there are. 146 in the 60s, goes up 500 in the mid 80s to 1 point, maybe 2.6 in 2015, going all the way up to around $4 trillion floating. And then as you can see right here, there's this huge spike that happened that basically quintupled it, multiplied it by a factor of 4. And what that was they reclassified and changed some of the rules on the money supply. In order to understand this, you need to understand how the way banking works. They're allowed to have a fractional reserve of your money in the bank, and what that means in practice is if you go to the bank and you give them $100, Well, then prior to this big spike here, the way it worked was they were allowed to lend out your money at a certain rate. Now, the rate was 40 to 1, I believe. So, for the sake of simplicity, if you put $100 in the bank, they were allowed to loan out 96 of those dollars and just keep 4 of your dollars. That a lot of people would consider ridiculous, but there are better, so whatever. But and then they could lend out the rest of that money, only keeping a fraction of it. Now, 40 to 1 is kind of ridiculous, but what they did at this spike is they completely removed the reserve limit, so they don't have to have any of the money in the bank that they lend out. It can all just be them changing ones and zeros and putting decimal places in places, and there's no importance about whether or not they have any of that money back. Now, if you ever watched the It's a Wonderful Life Christmas movie, which Merry Christmas, by the way, it's coming up. I'll probably actually watch that with my mom tomorrow. I love that movie. The problem that starts the issue that has the dude like almost jump off the bridge and kill himself, if not for the angel coming, was that there was a bank run. When there's a bank run is when a bunch of people go to the bank and try to take out their money all at once. And because each person's money is lended out to somebody else, you can't get your money, and somebody else is like, oh no, we can't get our money out of the bank. Everybody freaks out. The bank closes its doors. And in theory, in our system, we have the Federal Reserve, who, if that were to happen, would lend the money out to cover that. That's why the Federal Reserve is known as the lender of last resort. So when the spike happened, not only did they decouple the reserve ratio from any reality of what we actually have, they also changed it so that your savings account, the money in your savings account, counted the same as the money in your checking account. This chart didn't used to take up what money was actually in your savings account. Now, along with that, they changed the rule because, as it used to be, you may have noticed this, you could only access the money in your savings account something like 7 times a month because they wanted to incentivize savings. What I would say this spike shows, or at least this initial spike shows, that they were interested in decoupling people's ideas of saving their money because they were printing so damn much of it. Because in order to keep, in their Keynesian model, in order to keep the economy going, what they believe is just keep money flowing through the system, and cycling means that the economy is going good. It's not super sound, but that's what they believe. So let's just go with that. That's what they think they need to do, is print a bunch of money, put it around the system, give you stimulus, and allow the money to flow. That's what quantitative easing was about. However, you'll notice that after this giant spike, this continues to grow to about another $4 trillion. Now, it only took us all of forever to get to 4 trillion before this spike. Why not just throw another 4 trillion on in 1 year? Why not just put 100% more of that along with this giant spike? Obviously, we are printing money at an unprecedented rate. Along with that, when we print the money, the banks are the first ones to use that money when they lend it out, and that money doesn't have the effect of inflation on it yet because it hasn't gotten into the system. Once that money gets into the system and starts being spent, the pool of currency raises and prices go up. A perfect example of this, by Nathaniel Meyerson on CNN Business. Dollar Tree hikes prices 25%. Most items will cost $1.25. From CNN Business. Dollar Tree will soon be a $1.25 tree. The company, one of America's last remaining true dollar stores, said Tuesday it will raise prices from $1 to $1.25 on the majority of its products by the first quarter of 2022. The change is a sign of the pressures low-cost retailers face holding down prices during a period of rising inflation. What they failed to mention there, and what a lot of articles fail to mention, is that it's when the toilet paper fiasco happened at the beginning of the corona pandemic, it was because everybody was basically manufactured into believing that toilet paper, there was some sort of shortage because of the trucker shortage, which was just a natural effect of having lots of people quitting their jobs and staying home because they were sick. So newspapers and news TV shows were like, hey, everybody's buying toilet paper. Why don't you go freak out? Everybody bought toilet paper all at once, and then they had to wait for the trucks to come and refill the shelves. Again, there were some trucking shortages, so it took a little longer than normal, but it wasn't as if a important part of the toilet paper process was just gone from the supply chain. The supply chain was still moving for toilet paper. Now, the reason prices are going up across the board, across everything, is because of a fuel shortage that's going on right now. In China, there are rolling blackouts. They're using up all their coal and having to import coal from Europe and natural gas from Europe, which is causing shortages in Europe. The natural gas and oil that we get comes from Saudi Arabia now. In 2018, we were actually energy independent, and we were creating a new pipeline to pump natural gas, I believe, through America. When Biden came in, he shut that down, and now again, he's our betters. They know better than us, so I guess whatever. He had some sort of greater knowledge that do not have access to. But from my point of view, when you shut down an oil pipeline, what you're doing, even if the oil doesn't run through that pipeline yet, is you're sending a signal to the markets to shut down production of oil. Why would you invest in an oil company when Biden is shutting down oil companies in the middle of their production runs? They've already got this pipeline they're planning on making, and Biden just shuts it down. I don't think I'm putting my money into a company like that, because the thing could just be completely totaled overnight. So that means that we are begging for our energy to come from OPEC countries, which are the oil-producing nations like Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, we are beholden to them at this point, and when there's a shortage in one massive country that's got 1.5 billion people in it, there's a shortage all across the world because they're the ones who can pay for it the most. Now, when we're talking about the power of the dollar, it's important to know the history of the dollar. At one point in time, the dollar was connected to the price of gold. There was a ratio of gold to dollars that was not supposed to change necessarily. Now, all the other world's currency was agreed to be connected to the dollar, which was connected to gold, so that every currency would have some form of... You couldn't print more gold. So all the governments were kind of tightened and kept their monetary policy in a way that made sense. It's complicated how we got to there in the first place, but that's the way things were. And then Nixon decided to take us off the gold standard because a bunch of countries were asking for their money, their dollars worth in gold, but again, that's another story. After that, the U.S. was uncoupled from any actual meaningful store of value. So the dollar is basically, everybody is agreeing that $1 to me is worth $1 to you, and that's equal to one kind of ambiguous amount of labor, and that's what we trade for everything else. Now, the dollar is actually backed by something still, and that would be oil. The way that we have our agreement set up with Saudi Arabia is that Saudi Arabia only allows countries to buy oil from it using U.S. dollars. We call this the world reserve currency for oil. So that if, say, Germany wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, or China wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, or Australia wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, or the U.S. wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, we all have to trade our money into dollar bills. And that gives us a bit of flexibility, because that means all the dollars are being used by everybody. All of that paper that represents labor is being used by somebody, meaning it is in demand. Now, the fact that there's in demand kind of means we can print more of it, but only to a point, because there will be a oversupply of it at some point. But because all the other countries use it, we can kind of outsource what would create inflation to other countries. What is scary about that people may not recognize is that is only held up by kind of a implied threat of military force, and sometimes not even implied. An interesting thing I would bring up is that prior to Saddam Hussein totally having made weapons of mass destruction, according to our great better people, he was interested in trading oil with euros, and if one country were to start trading oil with euros, well, then another country could start doing it, or another country could start trading for oil in another currency. And that kind of takes the U.S. off the top dog list, and I mean, there's no way we could have that. Not that that's why we invaded Iraq and took him off the throne. No, that was definitely weapons of mass destruction. He was a horrible dictator, and, we didn't go in because of that. But then, also, Muammar Gaddafi was interested in making a new currency that was backed by gold that he would also use to trade oil. And then, Muammar Gaddafi was just kind of a dictator that we had to take care of. Like Clinton said, we came, we saw, we died, and then she broke into horrible laughter, like a Disney villain. But those people are better, so they know better than us. It definitely wasn't because he wanted to make his own, sovereign money supply that could decouple him from the international rootless transnational elite. It had nothing to do with that. Anyways, don't know where I was going with that. Now, again, we did raise the debt limit by $2.5 trillion, so we did kick the can down the road. And it's let's take a little bit of look at that real quick. This is from timcast.com by Michael Robinson on December 14th. Breaking: Senate votes to raise debt ceiling by $2.5 trillion. This is a move to avert a government shutdown only 24 hours in advance. On Tuesday, the Senate voted to raise the debt ceiling by $2.5 trillion. The vote comes only one day before Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the U.S. would default on its debt, which I would like to point out would be fairly unprecedented if we defaulted on our debt. Again, that's been a threat that has been levied other times, and literally nobody really knows what would practically happen. There's been economists who say all hell would break loose and fire and brimstone would rage from the skies and all of our babies would never be able to get college educations and money would no longer exist and it'd be Mad Max world. And then some people say there would be a couple of months of restructuring while we figured out a new way. Well, either way, we've avoided that for at least till 2023. So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the hike would allow the U.S. to borrow enough money to fund its operations through 2023. This will keep operations going until after the midterm elections. Clearly, the problem here is that Democrats are running on bad polling because there was a poll that just recently came out that showed that in the actual elections, Republicans are trending about 10 points higher than Democrats, which is pretty historic. I don't think that's happened since like 2002 or something like that after 9/11. So they're very, very worried going into these midterms, and with this, they know that they're not going to have to go up against the Republicans during the midterms for fighting about whether or not they need to fund the government right before the election, because they will be the party in power at that point, and no matter what happens, the party in power gets blamed for a government shutdown. So they know that would, no matter, even if they tried to twist it in whatever way, saying that the Republicans are evil for not voting for it, it would still fall on their heads, and they wanted to avoid that. Now, let me continue. Schumer and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell reached an agreement on the vote last week. The deal required they attach a rule change to another bill centered on Medicare coverage for Americans that would allow the debt ceiling resolution to move forward with a simple majority vote. This allowed Democrats to avoid a Republican filibuster threat. Additionally, it permitted McConnell to call it a win, as he wanted only Democrats to vote for the debt ceiling hike. This strategic play enables the GOP to go after Democrats for the debt in the run-up to the 2022 midterms. Now, this is the kind of political engineering stuff that I'm not really into. McConnell can call it a win. He can call it a win because none of the Republicans actually got attached to this, but regardless, it's still bad monetary policy that's going to affect us. And the problem with that is Mitch McConnell is a politician. Mitch McConnell may be a Republican, but him and Pelosi are in the same club, okay? When their bad monetary policy eventually leads to some sort of horrible Mad Max future, Mitch McConnell has a bunker he's going to be going to. Nancy Pelosi has a bunker he's going to be going to. Jeff Bezos has a spacecraft. Elon Musk has a trip to Mars planned. These people are planning their exit, folks, and they know that we're going to be left holding the ball. This is kind of the central problem that I wanted to get to, but let me just show you one other thing. Janet Yellen is the Secretary of the Treasury, and she had a creative idea to pay for the Build Back Better plan that Joe Biden is attempting to shove through Congress. And her thoughts were that we should tax what she called unrealized capital gains. Let's let her talk. Just see what she has to say on the State of the Union. Let's go.
Well, I think what's under consideration is a proposal that Senator Wyden and the Senate Finance Committee have been looking at that would impose a tax on unrealized capital gains on liquid assets held by extremely wealthy individuals, billionaires. I wouldn't call that a wealth tax, but it would help get at capital gains, which are an extraordinarily large part of the incomes of the wealthiest individuals. And right now, escape taxation until they're realized, and often they're unrealized and at death, benefit from so-called step-up of basis. So it's not a wealth tax, but a tax on unrealized capital gains of exceptionally wealthy individuals.
All right. Now, again, these are our betters, so they know better than us. So this is just me taking the information that I have as a simple retail folk, simple guy. And now I don't know what she means by when that's not a wealth tax, because every proposition that I've heard that's been titled a wealth tax basically is the same thing, talking about taxing unrealized capital gains. When you think of unrealized capital gains, what you need to think of is a guy who bought his house. Well, you know what? First, I want to point out that she said of exceptionally wealthy individuals, and I would like to also point out that that is the argument that got us the income tax. When the income tax started, the politicians at the time were saying that the billionaires aren't paying their fair share, and in order to get at the billionaires, we just need to stick our toe in the door and tax their unrealized gains, and it'll never affect you, except for, we're going to give that money straight to you, so this is actually a good thing, so come on and do it. And now, income tax comes out of every one of your checks, and it's in excess of 10%, probably closer to 20%. It's just kind of what happens. So when she says that this is just going to affect the most wealthy individuals, that is just a backdoor tactic in order to get into your wallet. Now, when she talks about unrealized capital gains, you have to recognize what she means there. What she means there is an individual, now this is again disregarding the billionaires thing, if this was applied to everybody, an individual who purchased a house in 98 and it was worth $35,000, and due to their unicorn magic completely nonsense housing market that they've set up that's built on sticks and straws, it's now worth $300,000. Now that guy has unrealized capital gains of $265,000. Government's going to need a chunk of that. Government's going to need what? That's capital gains. Capital gains tax, that should be like 30%, right? That's corporate gains. So you can see how this would be applied ridiculously. But let me even put aside that. Let's just pretend that she was actually going to tax these billionaires. Let's talk about Jeff Bezos, for instance, or Elon Musk. Well, Jeff Bezos is a good example because I think he takes a salary from his company at like $80,000 a year. Of course he has stocks, and of course he's got assets, probably like a house and a penthouse and stuff. I don't like Jeff Bezos. I don't like him flying into space in his giant penis rocket. I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, I can't say I wouldn't do it if I was him, but, I'm not a fan. So, but let's just pretend to apply this to him. Well, now he makes $80,000 a year, and then he has stocks that are worth $150 billion or whatever. Maybe not since the divorce, but let's just say it was worth $150 billion. Well, that means that he has unrealized gains of however much that stock has changed since, well, he created it. So $150 billion, right? That's all his unrealized capital gains. So government needs what? Let's say 10% of that. Government's going to want $15 billion from him. In order to do that, that means, well, he only makes $80,000 a year. He's going to have to sell some of that stock, ain't he? One thing that's important to remember is that he's not legally allowed to sell that stock due to his obligation to his shareholders. But again, let's set aside that and pretend that that's not applicable here. He would have to start selling $15 billion worth of stock. If he were to start selling that, immediately the price would go down. And then once he sold his stock, but the price of his stock went down, would the calculation for how much he owed the government in taxes be changed? Or anyways, you can see how this gets kind of off the road real quick, and it doesn't really make any sense. But again, that's just my simple bumpkin view of the way things work by, just following logic from first principles. I don't know. She clearly knows better than me because she's in charge of she's the Secretary of the Treasury. She is a very important woman, you see. And Joe Biden, he's the President of the United States. These people are important, you see. Now, what I would like to consider about this is the fact that people are going to be a whole lot poorer from this. People are going to have a lot of trouble owning houses. The interest rates are probably going to start going up here fairly soon. And we need to kind of recognize exactly where this could be going. So, for example, all of these companies that are involved in this kind of situation, all these companies that have made money, Amazon, Merck, Pfizer, Bank of America, all of these gigantic companies, Walmart, well, they actually have a club. They have an interesting club. It's called the Davos Group. There's a couple clubs like this, but the Davos Group is generally where big billionaire people come together and they decide how we should shape society. Because you know what? We all agreed, didn't we, that billionaires get to tell us how we live our lives. And we all got in that big meeting, you remember, and we said, I think the people who have the most money should be able to tell us, dictate how we should live our lives and how we should lead our family's education and health and finance. You remember that meeting, right? I met Tom and Bob and Joe and Jill. Oh, maybe you don't remember that meeting. Maybe I made that up in my head. But these groups have decided that they are in charge of us and have decided that they're going to make our life change. And with that, I'd like to get onto a little thing called the Great Reset. And don't change the video. This isn't some conspiracy theory nut job. I would like to go to the World Economic Forum's website, wefforum.org/Great Reset. Let's read what they have to say. There is an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. To improve the state of the World Economic Forum is starting the Great Reset Initiative. It sounds meaningful, right? Sounds like a good direction for our global elite overlords, those rootless capitalist and entrepreneurs that international bankster class. They should decide. Improve the state of the world, right? They are our moral betters. So let's take a little bit of a look at the context of where they're claiming this great authority from. The COVID-19 crisis and the political, economic, and social disruptions it has caused is fundamentally changing the traditional context for decision making. The inconsistencies, inadequacies, and contradictions of multiple systems, from health and financial to energy and education, are more exposed than ever amidst a global context of concern for lives, livelihoods, and the planet. Leaders find themselves at a historic crossroads, managing short-term pressures against medium and long-term uncertainties. Oof, that is important context. Now, let's see the opportunity that they allow for themselves, that they've authorized for themselves to take, because of the context that they may have created for themselves. Let's not forget. The opportunity. As we enter a unique window of opportunity to shape the recovery, this initiative will offer insights to help inform all those determining the future state of global relations, the direction of national economies, the priorities of society, the nature of business models, and the management of a global commons. Drawing from the vision and vast expertise of the leaders engaged across the forum's communities, the Great Reset Initiative has a set of dimensions to build a new social contract that honors the dignity of every human being. That sure is beneficial, right? That sure does sound, boy howdy, I would really like to be, completely and utterly controlled by this group of people because it's for the betterment of society. Why would I have individual rights and individual goals? I mean, listen to this. The inconsistencies, inadequacies, and contradictions from multiple systems, from health and financial to energy and education, are more exposed than ever. Well, that seems like we need, less systems, maybe a centralized system to deal with things like health and financial, energy and education. Yeah, we should totally centralize health and financial, make these guys in charge of our health and our finances, and these people can control our energy stocks and our education of our children, energy, whether or not we can heat our houses. I trust these billionaire, rootless, transnational elites to have my best interest in mind. Why would I not? Let's take a look at these partners here. I wonder who's involved in this so noble of goals, in this necessarily wonderful sustainable development goals that this group purports to have. Partners over here. Oh, this is like a list of a lot of all the letters and I'm just a simple guy. Let's start with A, I guess. Amazon. Okay, Amazon, that makes sense. They're in charge of basically everything now because they ship us all of our goods because we've all been stuck inside. That makes sense, considering that they're in charge of all of our groceries and everything that we're doing these days for a large group of people and a larger growing group of people. I mean, who better to control all of our, finance and energy and housing needs? I mean, they can make it more equitable, right? We buy things from Amazon. If I buy something from Amazon, they should make it equitable for everybody, right? That's who should be in charge of that. Who else? Adobe makes Photoshop. Good people. They've good software. I like Adobe. AstraZeneca. Okay. They made one of the vaccines, which are wonderful technology. Absolutely. Yeah. What else we got? Let's start with B. I guess. Bain Capital. They're pretty big. Bangkok Bank. Bank Julius Baer. Bank of America. Bank of China. Barclays. Okay. Bloomberg, yeah. BlackRock and Blackstone, I've heard of those, right? Big investment companies. Those are important. They control our investments. They control finance. They should be telling us what to do, according to them. I mean, this is this is what we all agreed on, right? Right, guys? Maybe we'll go, I don't know, down to P. Let's do P. We have Pfizer there, Farco, Prudential, yeah, Palo Alto Networks, Palantir. We all love them. What I think I'm saying here is this is not important to focus on who these people are. Just to remember that they made lots of money, and that means that they know what they're doing to completely control our lives. I mean, it's not like Bill Gates is trying to create a contraceptive that he can control remotely for 16 years, you know? I mean, he is doing that. Like, there is a contraceptive in development that's been, like, pushed by Bill Gates specifically, and it is a little bit it is a bit of a weird thing that he would be so interested in controlling people's reproductive rights and things like that, but he bought, you know, MS-DOS from somebody for 50 grand, and then he sold it to IBM for $1 a computer. So he knows how we are developing solutions to the world's greatest challenges. That's definitely who I want in charge of I mean, and look at all the good that they've done. I mean, they've created quarantine camps, you know. We can go to they've done so much good that they've created camps that if you go to Australia and, you know, you're going to one of these grocery stores that they allow you to go to, and you happen to walk by somebody who has a case of the COVID, you know, very deadly, very dangerous. Well, these people they're very thoughtful. They'll come to your door and they'll knock on it and they'll tell you, "Hi mate, hey, you happen to walk into a ruddy fella and he had the COVID, so you go on and get in this van." And they take you and they drive you to this camp, and it's a lovely little place where you sit on your balcony here. And if you step off your balcony, they can give you a $5,000 fine. And, you know, it's just important to make sure that our betters keep us in line. Simply, you know, we don't know that much. I mean, you could kill somebody if you did that, obviously. And, you know, there were 3 teenagers that broke out of this camp. And, I mean, the crazy people like that, you gotta round them up. You know, they were rounded up and arrested because they escaped from the COVID camp. Because they, you know, they passed by someone with COVID. I mean, they didn't test positive, but they weren't in the quarantine camp. So it was important to arrest them and put them away. And I don't know where they are now, you know? Kind of like a lot of the indigenous people there that are claiming that there are people being rounded up and taken to places. But look, our betters know what they're doing, and let me get out of here. This is just, at 6.8% inflation, like, that's not important either. I mean, see, there are people like Max Kaiser, the guy who's been right about Bitcoin for going on 10 years. Now, he thinks inflation's 15%, and they don't want to admit that because then they'd have to raise the Social Security rates by that same percentage because the cost of living increased. Well, that's crazy. It's not like the Dollar Tree is becoming the $1.25 tree, or the M1 money supply has, you know, sextupled, or, I don't know, wholesale price measures rose 9.6% in November from a year ago, which is the fastest pace on record from CNBC. We need to stop focusing on all these red things and realize that our betters have our best interests in mind. Seriously, one thing that I really want to get across to people is that everybody seems to have this idea that there is somebody up top who is directing the flow of all of these different factors, of the economic factors, of the shipping factors. Somebody who's counting how many truckers we have and how many truckers need to be on the road and calculating the difference and making sure that we're just within an acceptable range to make sure that our society doesn't quite collapse. Like, we might be kind of bad, but the worst thing that's going to happen is it's going to cost a little more from gas. I mean, I remember gas was like $5, you know, a gallon for, you know, years back, right? That was like the, you know, stuff happened. So, you know, there was the 2008 financial crisis. That was pretty bad. And, you know, we survived that. And nothing could be any worse than that. But what I want you to know is there's nothing like that happening. There is nobody at the top who's worried about you specifically, or me specifically, or even people like this. The people who are at the top, who are in charge, may have some vague, ambiguous feelings about how they have a moral responsibility for people like us, and they will point vague platitudes towards the ideas of freedom or the ideas of the ability to live a good life in America. But what you need to remember is they have a bunker to go to. It's like there were people in charge of a ship, and the ship hits an iceberg. And once the ship hits the iceberg, the captain and the people who were running the ship, who ran it into the iceberg, they can go, we could tell everybody that the iceberg's been hit, but we've got like 9 hours until the boat sinks, and there's some really nice china we could grab. So I think we should just grab some bags, load it all up, load all the china we can into the bags. And you know what? Counting lifeboats, it doesn't seem like there's going to be enough lifeboats, so we better make sure we grab a few of those for ourselves too. We want to stretch our legs out. And that's what's going on now. The elites know that the boat has hit the iceberg. And what you need to do is diversify as much as possible. I'm not a financial person. This is not financial advice. I'm just a retail worker. But just so you know what's happening, a retail worker, every time I get my check, whatever doesn't go directly to bills goes out of US dollars. I'm putting it into crypto or silver or gold or items that I need. Just recently in The Atlantic, I think they posted an article talking about how you need to spend your paycheck immediately in order to invalidate the effects of inflation. Now that works for a certain amount of time until the inflation gets so fast that the amount of time that you're working, by the time you're done with that, you don't get the amount of money that is worth the labor that you've done in that day. It can get very ridiculous is what I'm saying. And another thing I'm saying is that every fiat currency in the history of the world has ceased to exist. The Roman Empire collapsed. It ran for 1,000 years, and the elites there happen to be a little bit more impressive than our elites now, if I have to admit it. We're currently dealing with a world where we're actually looking excitedly at the idea of Donald Trump coming back and being president again, simply because that meant that we had a good economy, if nothing else. Now, I think Trump was good. I think he was a decent president, but I'm not going to say that I could put all my hopes in him. I'm not going to say that he was what he should have been, and I'm going to say that he was actually a massive disappointment. But when we're looking at him or Joe Biden, who posts the biggest non sequitur in the history of non sequiturs, I gotta say I'm a Trump guy. So, anyways, it's been nice talking to you, friends. I've got to go to bed. You guys feel free to mull this over, think about it, and if you have any comments, I'd love to hear it. I've got a Patreon and like a locals thing now, and if you have any Ethereum and Bitcoin to throw my way, feel free. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.